And just like that, we're back with another badass episode. This Life Ain't For Everybody, brought to you again by the one and only, the iconic Tennessee Sour Mash Whiskey, Jack Daniels. Thank you, everything that the Lynchburg family does for our brands. Enjoy it responsibly. Never allow underage drinking. But we truly appreciate the downloads and hoping y'all are loving the diversity in guests. We're bringing it. And today we are really bringing it. Y'all know my fascination with real music. And I'm not saying anything bad today about what's on the radio. But my guest today he's rocked my world many times. He's from Texas, I believe the Woodlands, Texas. But I've seen him all over America at different venues, rocking the crowd. His songs are amazing. His songwriting, I don't even know, like, what's better, the way he writes songs, the way he delivers songs, the way he can run a crowd. And he's got a new album out that I just have to start this off before I introduce Jack. But this album, if you have not heard the Marfa Tapes, so simple to me, and just like it's just like they left their freaking recording device recording as they sat around a fire. I'm going to get the story about this album, but it just mesmerizes you when you listen to it song to song to song. Do not skip one of them. The Marfa Tapes, Jack Ingram, the one and only. How are you, my brother?
I'm doing really well. How you doing?
Good, man. I'm a huge fan. First off, we'll get that out of the way. I'm sure you know that through Kevin, but man, I just wanted to say welcome to the show, and I wish that I should say I hope that now that COVID's laying down that I get to see you rocking a crowd pretty soon.
Well, I played 3 shows this last weekend and 4 the weekend before, all in front of people, having like big crowds, having a good time. Down here in Texas, man, it's kind of might be over.
Knock on wood. What does it mean to you, Jack, to be able to stand behind that microphone and look out there and see what I consider, and it continues to grow, but this cult following that you have it's amazing to me, right? It's one of those things to where they sing along to every song. They can't wait for the new music to come out. They fill the merch booths. What does it mean though? Like you're my age about. I'm 46. You're born right before me. You're a Texas musician that has gone into major radio before. I want to get that story a little bit if you don't mind talking about that in the future. But what does it mean to be able to go to Green Hall or some of the different iconic places in Lukenbach, Texas, or Austin, Texas, and see what has become this cult following of Jack Ingram?
Well, it's funny. If you'd asked me that a year and a half ago, I might have had a slightly different answer, not near as much gratitude as I have now. Because after spending a year not being able to do that, it's pretty humbling, really. You know, to know that I started playing music just in my room, got a little crowd when I was 21 years old, and that's grown into what it is now, to where I have a full-blown living making music, man, and getting to be in front of people and getting to work the show and write the songs and sing the songs and record them and getting people jazzed up about them and watching their reaction when I play a new song. It's really quite special.
When you were talking about those early days, Jack, when you first started playing music in your room, being from where you're at, did you have kind of a multi-level influence of the king of country music they call George Strait, who comes from your state of Texas, but you also have one of probably the most iconic cult followings of all time with Willie Nelson from the state of Texas. Then you have the Jerry Jeffs, who, rest in peace, Jerry. I've seen Jerry live. He used to come to Austin for his birthday party every year. Did you have the influences from the mainstream George Strait style, but then you also had Bob Wills and Texas Swing and Willie Nelson, and then the outlaw movement, and then did you have the Southern rock and the rock and roll going on at the same time?
All that. I mean, that's the thing. When I was growing up, George Strait was king of the world still. His career was just starting, like when I was aware of music in the mid 80s. But, Willie Nelson was mainstream at that time, too. He had hits on the radio. It wasn't just a cult thing back then. And so I knew that you could be funky and weird like Willie, or be straight down the middle country. And then I also I used to go see Jerry Jeff in high school. I used to sneak into shows of his when I was growing up, and all that stuff. And then I was very aware of Joe Ely, and then my brother went to college. My brother's older than me, and he brought back, like back before Springsteen was Springsteen. He brought before Born in the USA. Like Born to Run and stuff like that. So all those influences, to me, just sounded like rock and roll. Whether it was Willie or Jerry Jeff. I mean, I knew that George Strait was country, but the guys that I really, really gravitated towards have always been kind of punk rock.
Kind of, when you start talking about, and hopefully I know that Jerry Jeff was an influence and a friend of yours.
Yeah.
What made him good? If you don't mind talking about your friend Jerry Jeff for a second, because when I first saw him live, and then I saw him one time at the NFR in Vegas with David Allen Coe, and then I started seeing him all over, from the Grizzly Rose in Denver to Reno to Texas, all over. Like I said, I started going to his birthday, saw him and Buffett together at the Paramount Theater, and we went to the Broken Spoke, and then we went over to Lukenbach. What made him so special? I see you get a smile on your face because I know that you've rocked all of those places also, and that's what's so cool about Texas music. But what made Jerry Jeff different to you, and why did he have such a great career after he did the Bojangles and got off to that start?
Well, I think the appeal to me was always it's just something about making shit work with duct tape and bubble gum, and you're flying a plane, and it's always almost out of gas. It's always almost about to go down in flames, but it never does. Like even when he went down in flames, screwing up shows or whatever, it was glorious. And I just think there's something about that scrappy. He's the shortstop in the Bad News Bears.
Dude, that's why you're such an amazing songwriter, because of the way you just explained Jerry Jeff's career. I mean, nobody's ever said shit like that about Jerry Jeff to me. That's so perfect, though.
It just makes sense to me. And every time I'd see him, even when he was pissed off and yelling at the crowd or yelling at the lighting guy because the lights are too hot, it was just magical. And I miss him dearly. I really miss him.
Do you explain, or could you describe some of your career in the same way of like that, how you said it was kind of that Willie weirdness and that rowdiness and that scrappiness? I love that word, like grit, right? Like you hear the word grit and a lot of people might associate it with the original John Wayne classic True Grit, but there is something about having grit and being gritty in your line of work, right? And like what you like surviving almost, right?
Yeah, a lot of it is survival, so before I started having some real success in my career, I called it the war of attrition, because there's 10 bands trying to work the same club, even in just a small town, in the small pond, and you just keep going and keep going and keep going, and then one drops out, you keep going and keep going, and another drops out, and then all of a sudden there's 8 bands there, and then there's 7, and then there's 6, and then at the end of the day there's one band left that wasn't necessarily better than everybody, just more unwilling to give up. And there's something about, there's also the measure of talent and all of that, but that's never really factored into my side of the career. My talent has always been shown after I just stood there going, come on, hit me again. That scene in Cool Hand Luke when he's in the fight.
Yeah.
That's kind of what that's why I've always loved that movie, because there's a bit of that in every career, whether you're talking about Bob Dylan or Jerry Jeff or me or Todd or Hayes or George Strait. There's something about this business that makes you go, come on. Is that all you got?
Do you ever talk about, and are you open to talking about, Jack Ingram, of the transition? And I always I never know where guys like you stand on this, and I call it kind of where I witnessed what Pat Green went through. Did that happen to you? Did you transition from Texas music to try to do the Nashville deal? And if you don't want to talk about it, I understand, but it seems like when Jack did it, he almost lost that.
You mean when Pat did it?
I mean, I'm sorry, when Pat did it, he almost lost that Texas support. And I don't know if that's naive to say that or think that way, but it seems like he was a huge star with you and Corey Morrow and all these guys, then did Wave on Wave. And then when that ended and he tried to come back to Texas, it was almost like the support wasn't there. Is there something to be said that once you're Texas music, you better stay Texas music?
Well, I always looked at it a little differently. There is that element. There's an element of any band coming from whatever hometown where the people said you're ours. You know, whether Van Halen was trying to move out of LA and go to national, or whether, you know, every band has a local following at some point that owns them, that says we're the coolest in the neighborhood because we know of this badass band and we get to show everybody who this guy is. I mean, that's the way it was when I was coming up with Robert Earl Keen. It was cool that nobody knew who he was, and I got to show all my friends, like, hey, I got this new guy I love. And so there's always that element of them holding on to that and going, we liked your old shit better. Well, it's because there was an investment by that local crowd, whether it's Texas is local or whatever your local is. And so I always said it wasn't about jumping to Nashville. I always told my label when I was having hits on the radio, I said, man, y'all better help me jump the canyon, because if I get stuck, if y'all leave me high and dry here in the middle of the air and I haven't landed the next jump yet, I'm fucked. And so that's kind of what you can get caught up in it. But it's also, and that's if you're thinking about it on paper. But in my heart, from the minute I started, I wasn't a Texas act. You know, I've always been from Texas and wear it on my sleeve, and it's going to be that way forever. But I was always, my heroes were George Strait and Willie Nelson and Jerry Jeff, and those guys had national audiences, international audiences, and I was always like, why? The only way you can be a hometown hero is if you go outside your hometown. You know, you got to come back a hero, and that was always real important to me. Not just from a career standpoint, as fans go and everything else, is more like just from an artistic standpoint. I didn't want to just, you know, like my heroes were also Bruce Springsteen, the Rolling Stones, and people like that, where you go out and you kick ass, and you're not from anywhere. You're from whatever town you're in that night. You know, that's what it's always felt like to me. And so, but the reality is that it's hard, you know, because if you don't make it huge, you can't just go be a stripper and then come back and be a ballroom dancer.
Another great one.
You know, like you got to keep your heartbeat about you, keep your instincts about, hey man, you know, I want everybody to know who I am, but not at the expense of being a clown.
I often think about a life like yours of, I'm in this town tonight, I'm here tonight, and I'm gone tomorrow and on to the next. And it's another crowd. It's another song list. It's another set list. It's whatever it is. It's touring. It's that life. Do you feel at your age now, when you look back, Jack Ingram, that, man, what a fulfilling life. Like, this is what I envisioned? Because to me, it's almost like, well, now I got to start thinking about this coming Thursday show. Do you take time to pump the brakes and reflect on what you've actually achieved and who you are running with, and the everything from the philanthropy and your charitable work with McConaughey and Texas football, and everything that you've done with Miranda and this new album? You have achieved so much. Do you ever stop to think and go like, man, what a freaking badass life? Or is it just on to the next? No, it's there's always been a bit of that ability to stop and reflect. Because you know, for every 2 hours you see me on stage rocking it and having a good time, or doing my solo acoustic thing, for any time you see me playing, there's 22 hours of the rest of the day. And a lot of that when you're on the road is driving or riding, and it can be very contemplative, you know, like when I used to drive the van, I'd be driving at 4 or 5 in the morning after a show, and
listening to Townes Van Zandt on the cassette player and thinking, holy man, this is what I wanted. This is happening. And that's still how it hits me. It's like, I'll be on stage, especially now after COVID. You know, I find myself on stage blurting out like, oh my, can you believe we're here? Like, I think about it all the time, about the fact that we get to do this for a living. I mean, you know, it's 4 PM here. You and I are talking about music. I mean, that was always the goal.
Do you think that your catalog is an expression of your life? Are these songs that I've rocked out to for the last 15 years of my life, are they real? Like, can I go into your head sometime and see like, holy shit, he lived these songs?
That's always been, so my dad was a big fan of music. My dad's still alive, but you know, he's 77, not as with it as he used to be. But the reason why he loved all those, especially Willie Nelson, but all of those great songwriters, is that he said the same thing to me when I was a kid. He goes, you know, and this is before I was playing music. He would say, you can go on Willie Nelson's records and look at the songs and then read his biography. And he was living those songs as he was recording them or writing them. And so I think I just naturally gravitated towards, I remember thinking, A, that I wanted to get out and live life so I could have stuff to write about. And B, I remember I was talking to Radney Foster one time and I said, the problem with guys like you and me is that I don't have a shtick. I just have to be great. You know, like, because the competition that I'm up against as far as deserving to be here are some of the greatest songwriters in American history. Whether it's Dylan or Jerry Jeff or Willie or Waylon or those guys, like some guys have a cool shtick, like they're heavy beer drinker or they're just some kind of something that makes them kind of a cartoonish character, you know, like Hank Jr. with the hat and the glasses. I shouldn't say cartoon, but you know what I'm talking about. Kind of a caricature that it can kind of be this other thing. Even Willie had the braids.
Almost where you wouldn't recognize him if he didn't have the hat and glasses on.
Yeah. And so I remember thinking about halfway through my career, like whenever things weren't going that well, I was like, God damn, I wish I had a shtick. I wish somebody knew me for something other than just wanting to be a great, honest songwriter. And it took time before that thought left my head. You know, I had to go out and write some songs that really do stand up that now I feel pretty comfortable with that.
The entire career, it's been like I don't know if it's kind of like you just keep upping the game with your songwriting, but do you feel that improvements have been made in that aspect? Because when I listen to your early stuff, I still like that. It's amazing. But then I listen to the stuff that you're doing now and it's amazing. Is there an improvement era of a songwriter to where you learn the trait or the skill a little bit better? Because to me, songwriting is amazing. To tell a story in 3.5 minutes, it's amazing. You feel like you know, you feel like you know your car. You feel like you know that, you know, when you came out with Barbie Doll, like you feel like you know this, you live that. You know, it's like, do you improve throughout your career as a songwriter, or do you always just have that ability to do so?
Well, I don't think that I don't know if you improve or not. You'd have to hope to think that you do. Just the same way a mechanic at 20 is hopefully a better mechanic at 40 than he was at 20. You know what I mean? Like you just learn easier ways around things. You learn to you kind of can tell when you're writing yourself into a corner. But the one thing that I do know for sure that you get better at with anything that you do, as far as meditation goes, or getting your headspace into, like I call it turning the faucet on. You know, writing songs for me is like there's a faucet that you turn on, and when you're young in your career, that concept, you don't even really aware of that concept necessarily. And then you get better and faster at learning how to turn that on so that you can free flow and let words and music come together in your brain and work with other people. And you just get, if you're if you do yoga, or if you do meditation, or if you go running all the time, where I could say you work out, like whatever that is, you get to where you know what you're doing so well that you can jump into that mode a lot quicker and a lot easier. That's kind of what I know I get better at. As far as the words and melody, I think that kind of has to do with, I think that's the part that you have to be inspired.
And you've been inspired by several people that we've already discussed, but when you start thinking about the people that you've been in a room with, okay, and I mean, Miranda is arguably the new Dolly. I mean, she's unapologetic. She's country as shit. She wins the awards. She packs the house, but she's still got that, like, almost that Guns N' Roses danger to her. Like when Axl first came out with Jungle and was wearing like just the weirdest shit. He wasn't a hairband. To me, Guns N' Roses was dangerous. She still has that edginess and that grit and that danger to me, almost to where like she is a wild card. Like she is, but, you are her friend, a dear friend. You get to call heroes friends. Does that make sense to you that you get to call our heroes friends? And that's freaking crazy. So talk to me a little bit about how great and crazy that is. And give me like that first holy shit moment to where you're like, am I really walking onto Willie's bus, or did Willie just invite me to smoke a joint? Like, give me that first. Do you remember the first one where you're like, holy shit, this is happening?
Well, I remember I was driving down the road. This is way back when cell phones just came out. Like I still had the car phone that was kind of hardwired into the dashboard, and still had a cord on it. And I remember I was driving with a buddy who was a friend of mine from grade school, and he'd gone on to, he was in medical school, and he was kind of worried about, well, not worried about me, but like, is this real, Ingram? Like, what are you doing? And I was like, no, it's real. We were driving down the highway, and Willie Nelson, the phone rang, and I picked it up, and it was Willie Nelson. And he called me to invite me to be on the 4th of July that year for his picnic. And I was like, bam, that's right. And then, this is no lie, not 5 minutes later, Ray Wiley Hubbard called me.
Oh God!
On the same line, and asked me to come sing Dallas After Midnight, a duet with him on one of his records. And then that's the starting point of. Then Jerry Jeff Walker called me and invited me to go hang out with him for a week in Belize at his beach house, and ended up getting on Willie's bus and smoking with Willie, and just all the little things that you just go, whoa. Like all the things that you dreamed of as a kid that you couldn't even dream up. But you find yourself and you go, okay, keep your shit together. But you're really here. Be here.
I can't imagine like being able to rate them or the experiences. It's just like you can't. Each one, has its own piece of your heart. I would assume that, and I would almost guarantee that, because you can't say that what you just did with this new album is any less of meeting Willie and getting that first phone call from him. It's like everything's going to have some kind of nostalgic value to Jack Ingram. Where in your music history or your discography, where does the Unleashed project, and when I say that, I'm talking about the album you did with Charlie and Bruce. What kind of friends are they? And I think that I heard that Charlie isn't performing anymore. He can't or something, which really sucks because I love his stuff too. But
he's great.
Where does that project sit in your lifeline or kind of like your portfolio of work, Jack?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that in particular, because I have had a few of these records where it's collaboration with other artists, like the Marfa Tapes now with Miranda and John Randall. That's obviously what it is, and that's magical. But the Unleashed stuff is looking back on. I feel like that was, I don't know how to put it, because we are really, like, I'm really good friends with Bruce still. We hang out quite often, go out beers or whatever. Charlie's a little bit of a recluse these days, but it's almost like we were on a badass little basketball team that almost made it to the championship game. You know, like we were good, we had fun, we did something, and it's special. But it's almost equally as special by what it didn't become as by what it did become. You know what I mean? And that's not a lament. That's not me being sorry about it. It's actually a great memory. It's just the three of us, Charlie and Bruce and I, we did something really fun, and, you know, got us to the next spot for ourselves. It didn't really do what we thought it would do as far as commercially, but we sure did have a damn good time.
Do you have any idea why it didn't? Because it's an amazing piece of work. That's why I brought it up. Do you have any idea why it didn't do what you intended for or thought it would do?
I think it was because at that time of our career, we didn't really know what we even wanted it to do. We were just in our late 20s and just flying by the seat of our pants. I mean, that's part of what it was. Part of why it's good is because of what it was, and part of what it was is why it didn't catch on as much, because it wasn't really all. And that's the beauty of it. It wasn't like streamlined in a commercial way. It was just these three friends from Texas sticking their middle finger up at the establishment, going, "We'll do whatever we want,"
so
which is fun.
Did it bite you in the ass at all of sticking that middle finger up, you think?
Well, I had that middle finger up for a few years. And I think I intended it to be that way because my heroes did that. Guy Clark, Jerry Jeff, Willie Nelson, Waylon Jennings, even Merle Hack. Like, most of my heroes were commercially successful by accident. You know, and so I think coming into a career like this, if you're not going to just go down the middle of the road, you have to be willing to go, no, I'm not going to do it your way. You're like, I don't buy what you guys sell. And I don't want to make something, I don't want to try and sell something that I wouldn't buy. So I can't, by definition, I can't have the career I want and fit in with you guys, because I don't really enjoy what you guys do as much as the guys that are doing it do, you know, let's take it for example. I've learned a lot about the commercial music world because of being in it and having hit songs and all that. I realized at some point that Kenny Chesney isn't making any excuses for his music. He loves it. He would buy it. He plays his records on 11 whenever he makes them. And in order for me to fit in commercially, it was just I had a little different conversation going on in my head. Sometimes in order to fit in what was happening on the radio, I had to make a few compromises, which is fine. You got to make compromises. But with art, I don't know. There's something about art that I don't think Kenny Chesney's ever making a compromise. And in order to fit in, I felt like I kind of had to. And at the end of the day, anything that's pure has to be pure to work. You can't let up on the gas at all.
I referred to GNR of Dangerous. In my opinion, and tell me what your thoughts are, and maybe answer a question for me, Jack Ingram, is the Nashville top 40 radio country. If you listen to this podcast and all of the guests that I've had on, some people would say that I'm on a soapbox sometimes about, like, they don't play real country music on the radio, and everybody kind of calms me down by saying, look, you know, streaming and everything out there, you're going to be able to find the music that you want to listen to. But I always come back to that and say, yeah, but Jack Ingram's real music. Brent Cobb is real music. These guys that I've been listening to since I was in college, but I guess I really don't have a place to say that in a lot of people's opinion. But to me, Nashville's too safe. And in your opinion, do you think like what just happened in the last 6 months with somebody like Morgan Wallen, who has had some success, who is becoming a better songwriter all the time, who's a young kid, you know, he's in his mid-20s. Do you think that's good for country music, that there was a little danger and there was a little bit of that outlawedness? I'm not saying what he said was okay.
No, I get it.
Do you think that we need a little bit of that edginess in country music?
Well, we don't. That's the thing, is it's not something that's needed, or like every artist that comes through and makes an impression like Morgan has, and I agree. What, you know, him talking shit in the middle of the night, take it or leave it. You know, I don't agree with that, but I also know that I've said a lot of stupid shit in the middle of the night that I would not want to have recorded. Whether it's, who knows what it could be, what the subject matter is. It's just, we all do shit. You know, nothing good happens after midnight, so to speak. But any great artist that's come on and made an impact like he has, like Miranda does, like Stapleton does, like Willie did, like it's always something that the people that end up loving it didn't know they needed it. That's why it's surprising, and it's not planned by the artist or by the fan. It's just, holy shit, what is that? That bends my ear the way only few things do, and it's exciting. I still get that as, I'm like, man, my kid, like my daughter likes Morgan Wallen, so does my sister-in-law and my wife. And you know, a lot of when I'm in the boat driving kids around, it's about the only time I listen to music, because I make it for a living. So anytime I'm listening to music, it kind of reminds me of being in my job. So I kind of, I'd rather listen to something that has nothing to do with me. But like when they started playing Morgan Wallen last summer, I was like, oh man, who's that? Those are some badass songs. Like that doesn't even make me jealous. It just makes me, I know I couldn't do what he's doing, but what is that? And there's only a few artists like that, you know? I mean, so yes, is it good for country music? Of course. It's always good to have a true artist, even if he's a redneck, shit-talking dude like Morgan. I don't care what we grew up around redneck, shit-talking dudes. Like that has nothing to do with being an artist. I mean, I don't know what Van Gogh's personality was like. I don't give a shit. I don't care. I really don't care what Morgan Wallen has to say about anything politically. Just the same way I don't expect him to care what I think. It's just more like, man, give me what you got, because whatever that is, it's punching me in the gut.
Man, that's a great way to put it. I love the way you lay shit out. I need to ask you then about an artist that has become what they call an honorary Texan. Can you please explain to my audience what that even is, and explain to me? And I don't even know. This is not scripted with Jack Ingram. I want to know your honest opinion about an artist from Kentucky named Chris Knight, who is an honorary Texan. Does that hit home to you to hear that name with his songwriting and his catalog? Oh, yeah. Because to me, he is the shit when it comes to making me feel what you just described as being punched in the gut.
Yeah, Texans have a elevated view of themselves. We always have. Same way people from Kentucky do too. There's only a few. I think Kentucky and Texas are the only republics or states that were once republics of their own, and maybe Virginia. But anyway, we throw around that honorary Texan stuff. Like when Chris Stapleton came and played the Mac Jack and McConaughey, the charity event we do. He got my tag as an honorary Texan, even though he's not from Texas. And it's this thing where it's like, if your art and your music, if a guy from Texas that's proud of being a Texan, like I am or whatever, and you see somebody else making art or music that's obviously living up to their own high standards, past the standard of being popular or being liked, it's this other standard of like, would I play this for Willie Nelson? Would I play this for Jerry Jeff? Would I play this for Townes Van Zandt? Would I play it for Guy Clark? Would I play it for George Strait? That has nothing to do with commercial viability. It has to do with your own standards. And Texans are pretty proud of the fact that we have standards as far as that goes. Bob Wills came from here. Willie, Christofferson. There's a high bar there's a high watermark for art down here, and for the fans. That we have our own music scene. When you go to Michigan, nobody says, "Hey, man, you're part of the Michigan music scene," but they know what the Texas music scene is.
So would Chris Knight get the Jack Ingram stamp for an honorary Texan with what you know, with what you're, or are you fawn?
From way back. I remember when he first put out that record with Frank Liddell.
1997.
It was when I first made my first record with Steve Earle, and I remember that I heard his record and I was like, oh my God, that's good. And the label that I was on, he was on Decca Records at the time, and they had made that record just shortly before I made my record, and my label wouldn't put out my record until they figured out how they were going to how the other Decca Records was going to market and try and sell Chris Knight's record. And then, so I was aware of that they were waiting to see like what the plan was to try and sell this music that's never changed. It was too rock for country, too country for rock, all that stuff that is always the go-to, like, well, I don't know. And then they were doing a video for, I think, either Framed or
It Ain't Easy Being Me.
It Ain't Easy Being Me. And Chris got drunk and got in a fight with the director. And like all this shit happened. I was like, well, man, that doesn't bode well for me.
I don't think he stayed in Nashville with Frank much longer after that. I think he was like, I'm rolling, I'm out of here.
I remember he said, if I can get it, this is back in 97. And even then it was kind of funny. Like he goes, if I can make $100,000 in this business, I'm retiring and going to my ranch in Kentucky. Like $100,000 was going to last him for 50, 60 years, you know?
In his mindset in front. I mean, Chris. I mean, he's
good, man.
I bet you he's cutting up a deer right now, and it ain't even deer season. Like he's just.
He's great. I wrote a song with him one time.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah, it's called "Stained Glass Window." And the light from the stained glass window shines down on my brother and me. So anyway. I was staying at the Shoney's Motel right there on Music Row, and he drove from Kentucky in I think it was like a Nissan truck. And he comes in the parking lot, and I had my door open because he was running a little late, so I was just going to see if I heard him or whatever. And I hear this coming in, and I was like, what the hell? And he had driven from Kentucky, like 2.5, 3 hour drive, and he couldn't get his truck out of second gear. He was driving like 7,000 RPMs for 150 miles. He's a good guy.
I just wanted to hold on one second. I'm bringing this up on you. On this, is that song on an album that you wrote with him?
I've never recorded it.
I'm looking for it.
I still have the. I think I did a demo of it one time. I should send it to you.
Were you part of the Jerry Jeff Belize project of like was it cowboy boots and bathing suits? Were you down there recording that?
That was about the time I was hanging out there with him.
You got to see that.
I got to see him do his thing out. You know that the birthday thing he did for all those years. They kind of set up a similar situation in Belize at Ambergris Key, where they would have 150, 200 fans come down, stay at the hotels there. They don't even have it's just a dirt road. One dirt road goes through the whole island. And Jerry Jeff would set up and play at one venue one night, like a rowdy night one night, a real singer-songwriter night one night. Then he'd have his friends come. That's where I think Todd was down there once or twice, and I was down there once or twice. It was really cool. Did
you participate in what they just did for him a couple weeks ago?
Man, I got crossways with Susan.
You did?
Well, which is actually a badge of honor.
All right, you pissed Susan off.
Yeah, you don't do that. They were so I was on the bill. It was like Rodney Crowell and Steve Earle and Emmylou Harris and Jimmy Buffett and Keith Sykes and anyway, all these great songwriters, all my heroes. And Lloyd Maines was the band leader, and like 2 months before the event, he started texting me, and I was only playing 2 songs, and he started texting me like daily about, we gotta get what songs you're doing. We gotta get what songs you're doing. I was like, dude, chill out. You know, I was releasing the Marfa Tapes, and I was doing stuff. I was busy, and I was kind of just being flippant, you know, just being a smart ass. And he goes, man, Susan's really on me to get your songs. I go, tell Susan to kiss my ass. I'll get the songs there in a minute. And so he told her that I said that. And I was like, dude, you weren't supposed to tell her that for real. So she got pissed off and kicked me off.
Did she really? Come on.
I love her, man. I love her. She had a good point, because I texted her and said, hey, I was just kidding. She goes, sorry if my sense of humor is a little out of whack as I'm mourning the death of my husband of 46 years. So taken in that light, she had every right to be pissed off at me. I was being a little dick. So like,
this is one moment to where like you wish you would have been on that bill no matter what.
Absolutely, man. You know, I normally don't regret being a smart ass because it's fun, and if you know, fuck them if they don't have a sense of humor. But you know, I should have been more aware of Susan's situation, and you know, he's one of my heroes. I could have told them any 2 songs, and I would have been able to go up there and play them anyway. Like, it doesn't matter what songs I pick; it's just being there to pay tribute to a hero. So I felt really bad. Still, you know, it's one of those things where I'll laugh about it and have a joke about it and think it's funny that I pissed Susan off. But at the end of the day, man, I respect the hell out of her and him, and shouldn't have been a little, you know, that's like, remember that I was telling you about I had my finger up to the world for a couple years?
Yeah.
That's like, it's like, hey man, I'm 50 years old. I don't need to be, you know, have some respect.
Like a maturity thing, right? Like it's almost
I was acting like a kid, like a dumbass kid, and I'm not.
Well, because obviously everything happens for a reason, but it probably would have taken you maybe 5 minutes to send a text of like, I'm gonna do maybe like Up Against the Wall Redneck or whatever, right? Like,
yeah,
it wouldn't have taken very long.
I could have just said, you pick them. I don't care. I'll do any of his songs. You know what I mean? Like,
well, which one would it be, Jay? Which one would you want it to be, though?
Yeah, I wanted to be there.
Which one would you want it to be, though?
I was gonna do the song called Derby Day.
Oh my God, dude! A man must carry on. A man must carry on. Great. If I took this video and walked through into my little studio, it's one of the albums, vinyls I have, because like that and Rodeo Cowboy, like oh God, that album, both of them, volume 1 and 2. Like I'm just the narration, and then when he does Derby Day, to this day I consider myself a huge Jerry Jeff fan, and I have no freaking idea what he's talking about, and I've tried to break it down 100 times. I have no idea what the song's about. I know that. I know it's about a horse and all this shit. It's like, I don't get it.
That's my favorite part. So I have a recording of me doing the whole song word for word with the intro. This is a song called Derby Day.
Oh God.
Day foolish pleasure lost.
Oh God, you're making me get goosebumps, bro.
So the whole thing is that he and Susan, the Kentucky Derby was a big deal for him. He liked it. They went a couple times, I think, and they always bet on it. And he got all hammered and bet on Foolish Pleasure, which lost the Derby. And he got all hammered and wrote a song because he pissed off Susan. And that's kind of what it's like. Hey, Susan, you are a jewel, about the rarest I've ever seen. I wish I could polish off all the edges of my craziest dream. Just one of the best songs, just one of the best stream of conscious kind of songs I've ever heard. Still knocks me out.
I knew we were going to have something in common, Jack Ingram. I just knew it, because nobody, when they think of Jerry Jeff, it's always Sangria Wine. It's always LA Freeway. It's always, there's a ton of great stuff. Guy Clark stuff that he did, Ray Wiley Hubbard stuff that he did. But that song, Derby Day, like literally will leave you speechless. And it's left me speechless every time I listen to it. And I still don't get the 100% gist of it, right? Like it's like so personal of his inside psyche that I'm just like, damn it, what did it take for this man to write these songs? The lyrics that you just said about the edges and all of the things about Susan, like it's so deep to me, but still so simple.
It really is.
It's just so great.
Simple. Well, the thing is that it's so unique. it's from one man's perspective and a very unique perspective. You know, like everything I do is backwards. You know the way I am. You know, I know, you know, I love, you know, I love, you know, a silvery line. And he's just saying, like, it's so simple. He's giving an example, like, everything I do is backwards. You know how it is. And then he jumbles up some sentence to show her, like, at the end of the day, you know what I just said is I love you.
God.
No matter how I said it.
Do you get romantic about stuff like that, Jack? Does that make you want to go hug your wife and your kids when you know that much freaking love came across in a line like that? And tell me on the backside of your question, Jack Ingram, please, have you hit that line yet that makes you go, holy shit, like I'm going to go grab onto my loved ones right now? Have you written that line in your career yet?
Well, yes, it does make me romantic about and sentimental about what music can do and how it can connect people. That's why I got into this thing, was because songs like that, you know, I probably heard that song Derby Day before I ever had I know I heard that song before I had a family or probably didn't even have a girlfriend, but whatever I was doing, it made me tear up and get the chills and want to be with people special to me and let them know how much I feel about them. And yeah, every now and again, well, at some point that same feeling comes across every time I write a song, especially when I write it by myself. There's some point that gives me that kind of feeling of like, yes, this song is worth all the effort that I'm going to put into it, because it just gave me the chills. And the next line, if I get it right, it's going to give me the chills. And that's the bar that I set for myself of, just because a line works doesn't mean it should be in the song, because there's another unconscious thing that happens when you sing a line to yourself and you know you just knocked yourself. Like you just go, oh yeah, that's the line. And you don't even have to know what it means. But in every one of my songs, I'm pretty confident. I know that's the goal, and I'm pretty sure I've met it a few times.
Guaranteed you have. Before I move on to this statement, man, I love listening to you talk, dude. I love the mind that you have when it comes to explaining shit. And then when you did that voice of the beginning of Derby Day, it just like made my day. Like when I hear that come on, I'm just like, God, I miss Jerry Jeff. My song at my wedding, our first dance song was "I Love You" by Jerry Jeff, and when he sings,
"I love you,"
this
I love you.
Louisiana, and just the whole like it brings me back to like, how could I F up my marriage? How could I fuck up my marriage after I gave it the pledge with Jerry Jeff singing that song? It's almost like life just hits you in the ass, and mine did, and it got away to where, and music is what brings me back a lot of times and grounds me of this life that wasn't supposed to be. I was supposed to sell portable toilets and pump them out for a living. And then one thing led to the next. And now I'm sitting here going, man, I've made some mistakes. And then music brings me back to that grounding feeling. And I want to go into what you did with I think you won, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Song of the Year last year, or the year before, with Tin Man, correct?
Yeah, in 2018.
This is a song that hits you in the head and the stomach and the gut, and her delivery, Miranda's delivery on it is amazing. You've sang it. When do you know that you have something like that? Did you know when you guys said, okay, it's it? First of all, Jack Ingram, how do you know when a song's done? And then do you and Miranda look at each other and go, that's going to be Song of the Year or a guaranteed number one? Or how do you know?
No, that's the beauty of it all. That's the humbling part. It's the beauty of it. It's the frustrating part, is that there's songs that aren't even on records that I feel the same, that I'm just as honored to have been a part of writing, that don't even get recorded. All the songs, not all of them, but a great number of them, you finish them, and when you're finished, you're finished because you. Well, the way I know a song's finished is after I play it for somebody or a crowd or somebody who wasn't a part of writing it, and you can tell you can't tell by their reaction, because everybody reacts kind of like, oh yeah, that's cool. And they never go too high or too low. They never say it sucks. They never say that's the best thing I've ever heard. And when they do, you think they're lying. So I guess my answer is, when we wrote Tin Man, we knew that it gave us the chills. That's the only thing you can go by. Is, does it make you feel that same way that you want to feel when you know you did something right? Like when you hit a baseball, or when you hit a 9-iron and you know it's right, or whatever it is. That's how that song felt. But the next statement is, I've written a bunch of those songs that felt that good that didn't go anywhere. There's no awards attached to a bunch of songs of mine that I felt really good about. So you just kind of write them and you let them, you see if they're going to go out and find their own destiny, because that's all you can do.
Do you mind telling me how that idea comes up? Do you call Miranda, or do you get in a room with her and somebody has the idea already and you just start going off of that vision, or maybe a line that they've already come up with? Or how does a song that becomes so big start?
That particular song, John Randall and Miranda and I were hanging out, and somehow we were talking about following your heart, and everybody says that you should follow your heart, and we were, I was like, yeah, well, they don't tell you how vulnerable that's going to make you, and how bad that can hurt sometimes if you follow your heart. And then I'm pretty sure Miranda, I don't know who said it, but I'm pretty sure it was Miranda, said, well, we should warn the Tin Man. And we're just, that's the moment where you go, that's our song, that's what we're writing. So there is a moment where somebody says something in a conversation that you're just having, and somebody goes, boom, that's our song. And then you move on from there, and you just kind of come together. We're such good friends, the three of us are, that you kind of, mind meld. You're almost using one brain powered by three people. It's pretty cool. It feels almost like you're hypnotized almost.
So, in fairness, or is it fair to say, Jack Ingram, that a movie that my mom made me watch every year of my childhood when it came on TV would, in my 40s, become one of my favorite songs to listen to because of that vulnerability? And I mean, that's really what inspired it, is that he didn't have a heart. So he didn't have to worry about being vulnerable. He didn't have none of those worries. He didn't have to worry about ever being heartbroken, which sucks. It sucks to be heartbroken. How cool is that, man? That is songwriting at its best.
Well, it's also, taking what other artists, somebody wrote that story, Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz. Somebody's written, like, some of these songs that people write are inspired by paintings, or inspired by other songs, or inspired by books. And so that's one of the beautiful parts about being a songwriter, is that you're always adding on to a legacy or a mountain that's already been there, and you're just trying to do your best to add a little something to it and leave it a little better than when you found it. So
well put. I mean, I literally, like, I'm so honored to have you on here, and I know that you're looking at it like, I'm just Jack Ingram, I'm just a songwriter. Well, to guys like me around the world, around this country, it's amazing what you've done and what you've let us feel through your insight, through your words, through your pencil or pen, through an idea, and seeing it all the way through to fruition, to be able to put it down and say, this is me, this is who I am, and hopefully you get a feeling out of this song. And man, they just crush me. There's so many songs in your library that I listen to daily and on my playlist. And that's why when I got the chance to meet you and sit down and say, hey, I get to talk to Jack Ingram, I didn't want to just be like, well, my favorite song is this, tell me about how you wrote it. I just think that there's so much more to you than that. And hopefully I get to do it again, because I could talk to you for hours, is my point, Jack, because I'd love to go fishing with you. I'd love to hang out and enjoy something that we have in common and see you in concert again, man, because it is a badass career and you're just a kick-ass dude, man. Now I know.
I like that too, man.
I would love it, dude. I would love it to sit down with you and like to know that like you're buddies with one of the famous actors of our time, and that it's just a buddy of yours. That's the coolest thing about life, is that Matthew is everybody in this world probably knows who he is.
Yeah.
And he's your buddy. You're probably going to go to Chili's with him tonight and eat some baby back ribs. And that's just, I probably should not say that in Texas. People in Texas don't eat Chili's baby back ribs. Maybe in Michigan they do, Jack. Maybe in Michigan they do. I just did a podcast this morning with yeah, you might know him. Do you know Matt Pittman from Meat Church Barbecue? Check him out. He cooks with Roger Krieger once in a while. He does some stuff with Whiskey Myers, and he just did. He just did it. He's a big fan of yours, but he's in.
Oh wait, Meat Church.
Yeah, Meat Church Barbecue Supply.
So yeah, man, I met him. I went in a couple months ago. Miranda played Billy Bob's for the first time after the pandemic, and yeah, they were out back with the entire band and crew teaching them how to cook a brisket. And I walked by, I was like, rookies.
He was at Miranda's grand opening in Nashville a couple weeks ago. He was hanging out there.
That makes sense to me, man. That makes sense. Yeah, those are good guys.
Yeah. Anyway, I was talking to him about Texas barbecue, and it's the same thing. It's that that shelf that y'all are on about. And I asked him about Carolina and Memphis and Kansas City and all that, and he says it all comes back to Texas, man. It all comes back to Texas. But man,
you're so funny, man.
Go ahead. What's that?
I was just thinking about Guy Clark. My buddy brought him some barbecue. And he had brisket and ribs, and then he had some pulled pork. And Guy Clark opened it up, and he closed it. And goes, pork. That was it. He was pissed that they put pork on the plate.
Have you heard of a singer-songwriter from Alabama named Adam Hood that's in Texas a lot?
I love him.
Oh my God! Thank you so much, Jack, for saying.
One of my good friends and great songwriter, great singer. And you mentioned Brent Cobb earlier. He's one of my favorites too, man.
God, I love you, Jack. You're freaking unreal, your style. And I'm not kissing your ass, but those are my boys. Like, those are the guys that when I talk to them, they talk about you. Like, I met Hayes through Brent. And I met you. Yeah. I met you through Adam because he knew Kevin, and he helped me hook all this up. And it's like, how lucky, man. How freaking lucky.
Hayes is one of the reasons this happened anyway.
Yeah.
Because Kevin called Hayes and said, "Hey, was this cool or whatever?" And Hayes was like, "Yeah, it's great." So yeah, and it's all kind of interconnected. People that like this kind of music, there's a certain strain of whatever that is that I try to put a finger on, that you're trying to put a finger on, whether it's Chris Knight or Brent Cobb or Hayes Carl or Jerry Jeff or Todd Snyder or countless other people that we're talking about. It's like it's country music.
It is,
but it's not willing to put on too much fringe and bullshit. Like, we're not singing on hay bales. It's singing about the reason why people love a cowboy is because cowboys are different.
Mm-hmm.
They're full of emotion, and you'd never know it. And when they say "I love you," they mean it. And there's just a certain code that I think people identify with. And then there's the other thing where it's like, there's a time and a place for the other kind of music too. The get together and party, and we like to do that too. You know what I mean? Like, there's a place for all of it. Dolly Parton, Carrie Underwood is a special talent. Does she do what I do? No. But yes, in a certain respect, country music makes her cry too. It's just a different kind.
Well, I text Hayes one time, and I hope that you understand what I mean by this, is that I texted him one time and I said, there was many nights when you would leave the stage where I couldn't leave the venue, where like I was stuck in, and I'm not trying to be all like drama. I was just trying to show him like my mind was in a different place. And I say the same thing to you, that when you leave that stage, I hope you understand, Jack Ingram, what's being done to the people that just witnessed it. Like, it might just be another show to you because you do this nightly. I know they're special to you. And I know that you go from dance hall to green hall to broken, like wherever you're playing, Nugget, Reno, Tahoe, whatever. But you got to understand that when you leave that microphone, and I told Hayes the same thing, that you fuck some people up, man. Like, you really leave them sitting there going, holy shit, that's what I needed. And that's what I know that you mean about how therapeutic what you do is, man. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. That's the whole reason I got into it. I used to sit in the same, I mean, I still do sometimes, sit in the same audience seat. And when they're done, I go, oh, wow, holy shit. And then I go write a song, man.
Speaking of writing a song, man, and you just mentioned Brent Cobb, he told me that he thinks that his favorite country song that has ever been written is by Guy Clark off of the Texas Cookin' album, number 2. It's called Anyhow I Love You. Do you feel the same that that could be a perfect country song? I know that David Allan Coe says about the perfect country western song, but Brent Cobb says Anyhow I Love You.
Just you wait until the morning when you wake up with me at your side and find I had a lot about nothing.
That's kind of like Jerry Jeff and Derby Day, right? That song is sick. And Brent Cobb introduced me to it.
Is that it's a unique take on such an old thing of like, how do I prove my love to you? Well, that song would do it. And it's like, what did he just say? It's like, all I know is he said, I wouldn't trade a tree for the way I feel about you in the morning. Anyhow, I love you. Like, what?
What?
I love
Dude, that's so awesome how you can break it down. Man, I want to hang out, bro. I want to come down. I'm coming down to Dallas August 13th for the Texas Trophy Hunters Association convention, and I'm going to hit the stop. It's actually at the Fort Worth Convention Center. Man, I don't know if you're going to be around, but maybe I can look you up and freaking hang around and come see you.
Give me a call or a text or whatever, and if I'm around playing, hook up. If I'm up there, we'll hook up.
Dude, Roger plays that Friday night at Billy Bob's on that Friday night. Krieger's playing that night. I just saw they announced it, so I might go check that out. I don't know if you run with him at all, but maybe we could go hang out. He'd bring you.
If I'm around, I will.
That would be awesome. Well, I'll stay on for a second as I say bye. I'll after I stop recording. But dude, for real, that Jack Ingram's music to me is. You've heard me say this about certain individuals about what my life has been. And in 45 years, I look back on where music fits in, and it's the early days of my mom listening to Elvis and my dad listening to Willie and my dad playing gospel on the piano and us going to church and me hearing the hymns. But it also had to do with Quiet Riot 1982 and Mental Health and Twisted Sister, and Dee Snider was my first concert opening for Bruce Dickinson and Iron Maiden in 1986. And ever since those days, music has meant so much to me, and being able to talk to somebody like Jack Ingram after I've been left in that audience sitting there going, no, please don't let this be the encore. No, please don't let this night end. I still am mesmerized by putting on a song and listening to it, and to hear Jack do the beginning of Derby Day again, or to hear him sing a little bit about Guy Clark's song, Anyhow I Love You. Please go out and get Jack Ingram in your ears, see him on the road, and just understand what these songs and these lyrics and the melodies and the harmonies and what they're doing. The new album that he did with John and Miranda, it will hit you like a ton of bricks, and it's so simple. Jack, I want to get into that album more the next time, but congratulations on being able to put your voice on a 3.5-minute story and leave somebody absolutely mesmerized, like, you know, and the air knocked out of them like they just took a sucker punch in the gut.
Thanks, man. That's always the goal.
I love it.
Punch them. Hit them hard.
That's Jack Ingram. This life ain't for everybody. Jack Daniels, thank you. Enjoy it responsibly. Never allowed underage drinking. Jack, I don't know. I ask every artist this, but publishing and all that plays a role. But can I go out of the podcast with a Jack Ingram song?
Yeah.
Can I pick one? Do you want to play one, or do you want me to play it out? It's up to you 100%.
Well, you play one. What do you want to play?
Well, are you looking for a guitar?
Yeah, I got one right
now. Oh shit, this would blow my mind. See, Jack, I wasn't even going to have the balls to ask you to do this. What do I want to hear?
Well, no, since I'm doing it, I'll play one from the Marfa Tapes.
Perfect. Which one is it? I'm looking at the album right now.
It's called Anchor.
This is Anchor, the new Marfa Tapes. Jack Ingram, John Randall, Miranda, Lambert.
Thank you all.
Yes, sir, I can hear it. This is going to be amazing. Y'all continue to listen to the podcast. Get Jack Ingram's music. He's all over the place. Thank you, Jack Ingram. This is Anchor by Jack Ingram.
Thanks, man. When the moonlight hits the water, the reflection hits your eyes. I can't take it any longer, and this rope is pulling tight. Be my anchor, pull me under in this river here tonight. 'cause I can't breathe when I'm with you. When I'm with you, I can fly. When you give in, there's a stillness and a comfort that you can find. When you give up, there's salvation in the sweetest suicide. Be my anchor, pull me under in this river here tonight. 'Cause I can't breathe when I'm with you. When I'm with you, I can fly. Be my angel, come and save me. Come and take me to the other side.